How long's the blackout going for?
Till 8 p.m.
Okay, so I have to wait till 8, basically?
You're welcome to like hang out in the perimeter area.
Well, the thing is, I'm half Italian, half Colombian, so do I get a pass to get in there, or?
Well, this space is right now held for just black folks.
Oh, just black, okay,
Yeah.
so full black, you're saying?
If you have black ancestry, or if you have experienced oppression because you are black, then you can enter this space.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Last Friday, the people at the CHAZ, who really want us to call them CHOP now, but I'm going to keep on calling them CHAZ. Free feel to join me or call them CHOP if you want to bow to their will. Anyway, so they had a Juneteenth celebration, and they organized a bunch of activities for them to do to celebrate the release of Black Americans from the bondage of slavery. And in their Facebook event write-up, they wrote, "We're blacking out CHOP. The viral death of black bodies was the catalyst for this current movement, and we need to make sure we remain focused. This means both policy and systemic change to our systems and healing space for black people." So that's exactly what we're creating, a series of events in which we center black healing and community. What we need from our non-black allies are donations of money and supplies, and the willingness to support by quietly protecting sacred space for black healing. We need allies on the outskirts who are willing to be a physical barrier of protection and to peacefully deter potential interruptions. Now, I was asked by a couple of news sources to comment on this because a similar event happened at the Evergreen State College, where in the winter of 2017, the Evergreen administration decided to reverse the traditional day of absence, where traditionally events were set up off campus for black students and students of color to absent themselves from campus and to do some community building. And then in 2017, the administration and the faculty decided to absent white people from the campus and to center the campus on students of color. And that's a direct quote from one of the event organizers.
We are having people of color stay on campus, and we are encouraging white staff, faculty, and students to go off campus in order to make the space at Evergreen more centered around people of color.
In the wake of the 2017 protests, the media and individuals latched on that day of absence as a hallmarker of offense, because that struck at the heart of a lot of the work that had been done over the last century to desegregate America and work towards equality between various racial groups. That seemed, to the outside eye, to be a regressive reversion back to segregation. I wasn't really going to offer comment on this specifically because I don't think it's necessarily that interesting in and of itself. Yes, the left, so-called, is back into segregation, but what they're actually doing is causing one group of people to be sacred and another group of people to be profane. And while that in and of itself is rather eyebrow-raising and eye-opening to the internal machinations of this ideology, it's actually going to have a very strong and powerful effect on the community, who is now being thrust into a caste system where black individuals are sacred and white individuals are profane. That's ultimately what's going to happen. And the Evergreen protests became so crazy because the students had internalized not only this virtuous victim, obsequious oppressor narrative, but also that distinction between blacks being of a higher order of authenticity, of importance, and whites needing to be put into their place and to serve the black community. As this works itself out within the CHAZ CHOP community, what you're going to see is more and more egregious acts on behalf of the black people, because they are exempt from criticism, and more just blind following on behalf of the white people. For example,
Hey sir, this is a really traumatizing space for a lot of people, and I don't think that it's necessary for you to be here. If that is your opinion, then this is not the space for you. This is not a space for you, and we understand. It's really just traumatizing for people. It's traumatizing. It's traumatic. Your hat and your flag are traumatic at this point. You're looking at dead bodies. You're looking at dead bodies, and then you're wearing a hat that says that you support the person that killed are you? We're here.
Please tell me that's not a Make America Great.
Yeah. Sure is.
So obviously you came here to stir up shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
One,
You can't come here if you in your face and you want to be on YouTube. Go home.
Someone got a lighter? I light that bitch on fire.
At the level of the CHOP and at the level of the protests at the Evergreen State College in 2017, we're going to see a lot of crazy behavior, and we will be able to make a lot of hay about that and be disturbed and raise the word about that. But what is interesting to me is how this affects the so-called adults, the so-called professionals. Just last week, one Michael Korenberg resigned from his position as a chair of the Board of Governors of the University of British Columbia, and he wrote this article, which is the verbal equivalent of thrusting your tail between your legs and then kind of waddling away. Over the past 2 weeks, some articles, statements that I liked on Twitter supported regressive voices and took aim at thousands of brave individuals who are standing up against racism, discrimination, and hatred. He actually liked some Trump or Trump-adjacent tweets. To continue. While I do not support violence of any kind, I understand how my actions created questions about who I am and what I believe in. To be clear, I support Black Lives Matter, and I support the de-racialization of our educational institutions and our country. Subnote. What is actually happening, if you saw my video yesterday, and if you are paying attention to what's actually happening across America, across Canada, especially in the educational institutions, is not a deracialization. It is, in fact, a racialization. That is what we are witnessing, the formation of a caste system before our very eyes. To continue. But I accept that. In liking these social media posts, I damaged what I support, and that I hurt people. I wholeheartedly apologize to them, particularly to the students, faculty, and staff of the UBC. So, if you're white and you like the wrong tweet, you will resign. You will be resigned, as I like to think of it. However, if you are of a different caliber of individual, that is, if you are a Black individual within the educational institutions, you can write some pretty darn crazy stuff, and I'm pretty certain that you will be lauded for it and given positions of power in these universities. So, just for example, here is Brittany Cooper, who is Professor Crunk on Twitter, and she is an associate prof, or an ASPRO, as I like to think of them, authoress beyond respectability, eloquent rage, and co-editor of the Crunk Feminist Collection. What she wrote is this: since white people are having a whole racial reckoning, one other area you need to decolonize is in the type of Black people that you choose to learn and earn your diversity cookies from. What do I mean? I look at some of the Black folks that liberal white folks love, and all I'ma say to you is that some of your faves get the deepest side-eye from Black people. Y'all be picking non-threatening Black folks, the ones that make you feel good and redeemable. Uh-oh, white people thinking that they're redeemable? What a shame. It is to these Blacks that you give money, institutional positions, power, book deals, and platforms. But if those Black folks ain't got a deep bench of other Black folks to vouch for them, you should be careful. If those Black folks are conflicted about their Blackness, if they are overly impressed that you, a white person, especially if you have clout, is paying them some attention, then all of y'all are in a circle jerk of external and internalized white supremacy. Find the Black people who are impressed by you, read, cite, and give love to the Black people that other Black people read. It isn't an exact science. Some Black folks with integrity got crossover appeal, but they are the few, not the many. I could go on, but I just want to kind of truncate the recitation of her thrilling invective, and just to say that there's two levels of this. One, she's able to make extremely racist statements, and that is okay within her position of authority as a Black person. Furthermore, what you see happening here is that sacred bubble that the black people have now been placed on because of this ideology. That sacred bubble is now being further divided by people who want to maintain that sacred space, to maintain their untouchableness, their high ground. The problem that we're going to see with this caste system is that the people who support the caste system will be using it to gain resources, power, moral authority, etc., money, needless to say. They will be shoving people out of that sacred designation of black who do not conform to what it means to be black, which is to agree with this caste system, which leads me to believe that this is inherently unstable, as there is only so many resources to go around, and if the narcissistic sociopaths claim the most resources right away, there won't be enough left for people who are aimed towards a sustained or sustainable leveling of the playing field. If you even agree that the playing field should be leveled, which, to refer the video that I posted yesterday, white people go down, black people go up.
It's level for white people, and many white people in white society feels that whites are on a level playing field. And then for blacks, minorities, yes, there are challenges. And so we'll pull that up like this, when in reality, it can't be that way. It has to be this way. And to create true equity, we have to truly shift the balance of power. It cannot simply just be white people in power lifting up people of color.
Even if you agree that we should strive for equity, the people who are going to claim the most resources in that being moved up and the people who are going to be moving down will end up being the most selfish individuals. And that's why you see in the pressure bubble of the Evergreen State College, who rose to the front? You have this very weak administration that's kowtowing to the mob, and then you have a Jamil and a Naeem Alo, and then a couple of other very brash personalities who will claim power over the movement, because the metric of this reparations-oriented equity movement is not based on meritocracy. It's not based on skill. It's based on force. And so what you're going to have is the most forceful people coming into the front of the fray and then kind of basically tearing everybody else up in their wake. These people are inherently going to destroy their own movement. However, and this is the tricky thing, because so many institutions have been captured by this ideology, they will have to act out what happened at Evergreen within their own little bubbles. And we'll see how it shakes out in every given different institution. But basically, my contention, my argument, my guess, let's just say, my speculation, is that what we are going to see is the ways in which society has regulated narcissistic personalities and the ways in which our society has put into their place sociopaths will be torn down, right? I think that you're always going to have narcissists, you're always going to have sociopaths, but if you base your system on merit, if you base your system on something that has a direct positive feedback loop, you will actually force narcissistic individuals and force sociopaths to work for other people rather than just themselves. They will work for themselves the whole time, but they will be working in aggregate with other people. They will kind of rise everybody up. This system, because it's based so blatantly on power ultimately, and then just using race to get that power across or to shuffle around resources, because it's not tied to anything that restrains narcissism and restrains psychopaths. It has no actual positive values in it about brotherly love and generosity of spirit and charity and all that stuff. It's no, you give me, you sit down, shut up, go away if you're not going to be giving to me, because it is an inherently narcissistic and sociopathic movement. What we're going to see is narcissistic sociopaths rise to the top. And furthermore, they're going to leave a lot of ruination in their wake. So I don't have any good messages for you. I know that there's a lot of people who are now being thrust into this entirely toxic progressivism that is capturing every institution known to man, it seems like, in this time. And what are you supposed to do when you are confronted with this ideology and you know how it's going to play out? I don't have a strong answer. I did a dry run of this video and my answer is, I can see a lot of weakness in my answer, but it's basically to take the adult road, is to not respond with offense, when somebody says something as offensive as these people will be doing, is to maintain a certain sort of detachment from the proceedings and to find connections with people who don't trust it either. Because the people who get possessed by this stuff, the allies and the activists who are possessed by this stuff, rarely ever snap out of it until reality itself bonks them over the head. And actually, if you look at what happened at the Evergreen State College, to this day, they're still rearranging chairs on the decks of the Titanic. They weeded out every bit of doubt from their community, and so all they had left was the true believers. And the true believers are looking at the protests and looking at what's happening across America, and I think that they see that as them being right all along. I think they were right in a certain respect, but ultimately, this is all going to fail, and it will collapse under its own weight. And so what do? Do we fight against it? I think it's too late to fight against it, but I think that we can make connections with people, and I think that we can prove ourselves as having integrity and maintaining critical thinking through the whole time. I know that's a really weak liberal answer, but that's just kind of where I'm putting my chips right now. It just reminds me of surviving a day of preschool, or let's just say the toddler room, where you're just surrounded by screaming, crying infants. And the way to get through that is to do what you can to divvy up the resources to get through the day and to maintain your own levity and foresight and, perspective on events. I really do think that we're headed into some difficult times, but I do think that eventually reality will catch up to this movement. And hopefully we'll see how much ruination is affected in its wake, but I think that we can prove ourselves as above and beyond it. I know that's weak, but this is Benjamin Boyce, and here's a kitty cat. Talk to you later.